Hello everyone, welcome to Hope Worldwide. So today we are going to have the same topic, that is health education, that I have taught you in the previous video, principles of health education from community health or public health. So today we are going to discuss other set of principles for health education. So I have my dear student Ms. Chanchal from second year BSc Nursing to help me for today's session. So we are going to talk about it. So let's see what are the other principles of health education. So to be started with, the first one will be like setting an example. So what do you mean by setting an example? So she has got very beautiful handwriting. So I have requested Chanchal to write it on the board. So you can see setting an example. So when we explain about setting an example, always people like to interact with illustration or examples. If I set an example of student oriented learning, so she's my student and helping me to take this video, that is an example of student orientation or teacher student relationship. This small example. So this is called principle of illustration. Principle of illustration. What do you mean by principle of illustration? Setting an example. When you set an example, make sure that you always set an appropriate example. Appropriateness is important, adequacy of examples are important, and you need to explain those examples in the right direction among the audience. So that is the first one, that's called as setting an example. So let's see the next one. It is about the seventh principle would be principle of feedback. So what do you mean by feedback? You might have heard about feedback in which topic in CET, communication or educational technology. When we actually study the model of communication, you know the circle of communication, right Chandan? Can you just draw it for me? Like sender, message, receiver, right? Then sender, message, receiver, then channel, then feedback. So I would draw it, okay? So sender, message, the piece of information, then receiver, then we may use different methods that would be called as channels, and the communication effectiveness depends on feedback. So what is feedback? The response what you get from the receiver. So when we use this principle of feedback from for health education, your health education is going to be very effective, because if you don't entertain feedback from the audience, you may not have the chance to improve, or to what is that called, self-critic is also important, to know what actually the information is credible or not, whether they are understanding the the session or not. So suppose if you visit a community, what I usually do in my social work scenario or in the epidemiology scenario, I go to schools and teach them about different programs like NBDCP, National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. So I actually ask the audience or the school children to please come and talk something about from the session, like what they have learned. So that is something about seeking the feedback from the participants is an excellent method for seeing the efficiency of the task for health education. So make sure that you always entertain the principle of feedback. Now, what do you mean by giving a feedback? And this principle is associated with another principle called principle of good human relations. So let us write that, principle of good human relations. So what do you mean by human relations? Good human relations are very much important. I would say from psychology domain, it is called rapport building. Good rapport is important with the audience. If you don't know how to establish a good rapport, your session is not going to be very interesting. So make your health education proper and appropriate and interesting. You would like to emphasize on good rapport building. That is nothing but principle of good human relation. When you have good human relation with somebody, the other person, you can even encourage them, motivate them to do much more better. So I think that is one of the universal principles to be followed in health education. Come to the next one, is about principle of motivation. Principle of motivation. So what do you mean by motivation here? Awakening the desire among an individual, or awakening the desire of a person to learn something. That is called aptitude has to be accelerated there. Okay. What is aptitude, Chandan? Aptitude. Willingness to learn. Okay. So interest to learn. So making, as an health educator, you have to make the person to create interest or among themselves, to learn about something. So that is called motivation. So motivation could be type of, like there are many types, like there are two types actually, primary motives and secondary motives. Okay, so what is primary motives? Like suppose if I am teaching you, the primary motive come from your end, like oh, I want to learn. It is always an active process. Secondary motive could be from my side. I am encouraging you as a teacher and you would learn better. That is called secondary motive. So two types of two. We need to know what is the actual source of motivation, and that can be implicated in health education. That is called principle of motivation. Okay. So now let's see another one more principle. It's very interesting principle that your teachers also will be using in the class. That's called principle of reinforcement. Okay. So Chantal will be helping me to write it there. Principle of reinforcement. What do you mean by reinforcement? Reinforcement is about re means again, enforcing. You are repeating certain important aspects in the session. Okay, so like suppose for example, principle of health education. When I talk about the subject to you, so I may repeat some words which are very much important, or repeatedly if I tell you what will happen, you will get more idea about it or better understanding about the subject. That's called reinforcement. Principle of reinforcement. In psychology, we could use it as motivating a person. There should be positive reinforcement, like if I reward you something, if I give you an appreciation, that's called positive reinforcement. What is negative reinforcement?
If you didn't give any appreciation.
I don't give you appreciation, but I can give you punishment. Okay, so you will say that, oh, Prita ma'am is punishing me, that is why I learn. That could be called as what? Negative reinforcement. Both are important to make the learner to study. Correct? So that's called reinforcement. But in health education scenario, reinforcement is nothing but emphasizing on a particular topic for better understanding. Okay, so apart from that, so that's about, I think we have discussed 10 principles of health education. So today we have an overview, like Chanchal will read out. What are those? Like
setting an example, principle of feedback, principle of good human relation, principle of motivation, and principle of reinforcement.
Okay, so that's all. So other principles are also there, like what is that? Simple to complex, easy to difficult. Okay, so like I start from a simple topic, then I will try to explain a difficult topic. That's called maxims of teaching. Like what is that? Easy to difficult. What is easy to be taught first, then I will go into difficult topic. Okay, so that's how there are other principles as well. But at least understand these are the main important principles. In addition, leadership is also very important. Okay, a health education should be a best leader. So you can inspire people to follow that, because health behavior is something like, suppose in COVID-19 scenario we are telling somebody to wear a mask. So changing their attitude is very difficult. So where you have to extend the role of a leader, inspire them, make them to follow it in a very constructive way. So that's called leadership. Also you can study about in principles of health education. So kindly refer PART textbook. It is one of the best textbooks I ever seen in community medicine or public health. So in that you can study all these principles of health education. So thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe and share. So if you want more videos on any particular topic, any topic in nursing or healthcare, psychology and sociology, kindly let me know. So I will be putting the video. So thank you so much, Chanchal. Thank you. And I do have a very smart videographer. So he's taking video, is very busy with that. So next session I will definitely introduce you. Thank you. Bye-bye.